very good afternoon, viewers, and welcome to another edition of Education Telescope on Leadership TV. I am your usual host, Mariam Rabiu. Nigeria currently has an estimated 20 million children who are not going to school, according to UNESCO data. In our second segment, an in-house analyst, Henry Tehemba, will be joining me to give justice to this topic. How do we get out-of-school children back into education? But on our first segment, here are the news updates. Abuja Prayer Ground donates educational materials to FCT school. A group, Abuja Prayer Ground, has donated education materials worth thousands of naira to Kadokuchi Primary School, Abuja. Speaking during the distribution of the materials, the group coordinator Nicholas Usalu said, "Education is the bedrock of any society," saying that it is their way of giving back and supporting the pupils to become better leaders tomorrow. The headmistress of the school, Edith Arhanhunde, commended the group for making the donation, stating that the school has been praying for it. She, however, called on individuals, NGOs, and government to support the children with the learning materials like this so that they can learn better. Federal government imposes mother tongue studies in primary schools. The Federal Executive Council, FEC, has approved a new national language policy which makes mother tongue compulsory medium of instruction from primary 1 to primary 6. The Minister of Education, Malam Adamu, announced this while briefing State House reporters after the Federal Cabinet meeting presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari at the Presidential Villa, Abuja. The minister, whose response to questions suggested that the government was cognizant of the challenges that the implementation would face, said mother tongue will be used exclusively for the first 6 years of education, while it will be combined with English language from junior secondary school. He said the policy had officially taken effect could only be fully implemented when government developed instructional materials and provided qualified teachers. And that is all on today's news update. Please stay tuned. We'll be coming back to our second segment, which will have an in-house analyst, Perrin Humba, who will be joining us to give justice to the topic I said earlier. Please stay tuned.
For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.
Everyday Tori.
Welcome back and thank you for staying tuned. As I said earlier, an in-house analyst will be joining us in the second segment. Welcome, Henry.
Thank you, Mariam.
Nigeria currently has an estimated 20 million children who are not going to school, according to the UNESCO data. How do we get back these out-of-school children back into education?
Thank you for that. It is unfortunate reality that full access to education is recognized as globally as a basic right for all children. In Nigeria, it is a pathetic situation that we are facing the consequences of out-of-school children. The UNESCO recently reported that about 20 million children in Nigeria are out of school, which represent about 10% of the over 200 million population that we have in the country, which is a far-reaching increase from the over 10.5 million out-of-school children that we have for the past 2 years as reported by the UNESCO. This is happening at a time that federal government and other donor agencies have been making concerted effort to make sure that every children in Nigeria get education. There are so many programs on the ground that the federal government has invested millions of naira to, which amongst others include the um, talking about the federal government last year. The Minister of Education, Malam Adamu, said that it has invested over 220 billion from a World Bank facilitated loan, which they borrowed from the World Bank to tackle the issue of out of school children. And aside from that, other agencies like UNICEF have also invested a lot of money in this issue to ensure that all Nigerian children get equal access to education. For instance, UNICEF in particular has been spending a lot in the area of the education sector with the recent program under the Girls Education Project, which is called GEP 3. They have spent over a lot of money. The program has been existing for the past 10 years. And UNICEF just last week reported that it has been able to bring back school children, about 1.5 school children back to school through this particular program. UNICEF has also been helping to facilitate this particular issue, especially in the state of the northern Nigeria, where out of school children has been a major issue through the cash transfer program. The cash transfer program is a kind of program that was initiated in 2017, which helps to give about 8,000 naira per student, especially in some selected students, which give them 8,000 naira, and the 8,000 is being given through the caregivers or the parents.
Is it monthly or annually?
No, per term.
Per term.
It's being given through the parents or the caregivers, and the money is to ensure that these kids get a better education. And part of the money is to ensure that they carry out a small business that will be able to sustain their education even after UNICEF program expires. And aside from that, World Bank recently approved about $500 million, which was a credit loan to Nigeria to facilitate the Agile project. That Agile project is the Adolescent Girls Education Initiative, which is the main target or the cardinal point of the program was to ensure that a child get a better education, which is part of trying to eradicate the out of school children syndrome, especially whereby the education of a gay child is seen as a taboo. So the program was meant to enlighten them more and support the gay child to acquire basic education so as to reduce the number of out of school children. But aside from that, despite all some of this effort that we have mentioned, the issue of out of school children has continued to be a major threat in Nigeria, following some unforeseen circumstances, or let me say factors that we have faced within, and there is no solution coming on the ground. Prominent among them include the insurgency, the issue of banditry, and the issue of kidnapping that has been happening in the north. It has seriously affected some of these processes, with so many schools being closed, which UNICEF has also reported that for the past 2 years, that is from 2020, let me say 2020, 2002, about 1.3 million Nigerian students are not going to school due to insurgency. So these issues have hampered the process of trying to tackle the issue of out of school children in the country.
A lot of people say corruption has a major role to play in this situation. Is that true? What do you think? Does corruption has a major role to play?
Well, let me say there is a connection between corruption and the issue of out of school children. Unlike any other sector in the country where corruption always plays a major part, let me say negative impact. In talking about the issue of out of school children, corruption is playing a major role, because what we have on ground now, we have some issues whereby money that is meant for infrastructure development in some of the public schools to try to facilitate or push for bringing children who are not going to school to school has been a major issue, where we have instances where politicians sit on this money and could not channel them to what is meant for the development of our children. A prominent case is an issue with the Universal Basic Education Commission. There is what we call a matching grant. This is a money that has been released from federal government through UBEC to share to state to provide infrastructure and ensure necessary facilities for students to attract students to school. But before you access this money, there's what we call matching grants. You have to pay a certain amount of money. For instance, maybe there is maybe 500 or what, I'm just giving an instance, maybe 100 million is allocated for a state like Abia. But before you access this money, the federal government say you must pay a certain amount to show your commitment, or you must, for instance, commit 10% of that particular money they are going to give you in the account before they issue that money to you. So what we have on ground is an instance whereby most of the states, for them to pay this amount, for instance, to access this money and develop the basic education at their own level, states are not paying this money, which the money has accumulated to UBEC. The recent interaction we have with UPEC, the governing board of the council lamented that states are not cooperating with them, despite the fact that the number of auto school children continue to be on the increase. States are refusing to pay this money. And when a vivid investigation showed that most of the governors, some of them, that since there is no benefit of using the state resources to pay that counterpart funding and get the money to promote basic education in their own various states. So I could describe this as a kind of corruption because, and we have had instances whereby some state governors approved this money, they got the money, and you could not identify any single project that has taken place in their various states. So this is some of the challenges that we are facing when we talk about corruption being one of the major impact or effect of having large number of auto school children in the country.
Okay. What are the consequences of having high rates of out of school children in Nigeria?
Well, let me say the consequences. The consequences, we have so many consequences of having a large number of auto school children. Discussion here, I would categorize it under three major categories, which are the economic, the security, and the democratic consequences. What I meant by the economic consequences is the fact that Nigeria has over 20 million out of school children as reported by UNESCO. And these 20 million out of school children are the uneducated children. They have not been opportune to get access to any education. So that means they remain productive and useless. Sorry for using the word useless. Useless in the sense that they cannot add anything economically to the growth of the country. And we know very well that it's only a productive population, or it's only a productive citizen that can add to the growth of the economy. So having a number of children, a large number of children who are not indicated, means that they have nothing to offer when it comes to the economic growth of the country, because they themselves are not skills. We know that in the 21st century, all these skills people, the job we are doing here, we cannot give this job to an illiterate because we know what is involved to do the job. It's only the uneducated that can be able to carry this kind of task. So the unproductive population will affect the economic growth of Nigeria negatively because they have not been opportune to, or they have not been trained or incapacitated to do the job that will bring development in the country. Then when we talk about the insecurity challenge, we already is something that I don't even need to talk much about because all of us here have been
It seems
affected.
it's
It's something that
normal
is
already
happening
in the
on a normal
country.
level.
Yes.
And when if you carry out an investigation or research on this particular topic, you discover that most of the people who are being used for banditry, who are being used for kidnapping, or all these insurgency attack are people, especially that is happening in northern Nigeria, people who are not civilized. They kind of feel like is that they have been denied their right because most of these children, even some of them that have the zeal to go to education because of the environment surrounding them does not make it conducive for them. So they feel this is the last option for them to embark on kidnapping to make their enemy. So it's a kind of people have already agitated about this thing. Recently, I saw a statement where former President Olusegun Obasanjo lamented that the growing number of auto school children is a time bomb.
It's
That when
alarming.
it's alarming, and when it explodes, it will have a serious effect that it will take years to fix it. And we're already seeing what is happening in the country. So many of them. That's when we talk about the security impact of this having this number of auto school children. Is from that aspect. Then we talk about the democratic aspect that I have mentioned. The democratic aspect, people who are not educated, the Constitution of Nigeria does not permit those without certificate to rule us. For instance, the office of the president or the office of the governor or being a senator, you have to attain a certain level of certificate or education qualification before it will allow you access to contest for such this protest. So people who are not educated, that means they are automatically disenfranchised. They are excluded from participating in any election. So when we talk about the democratic process, it has seriously affected the way we run our democracy. And most of this today we are drawing closer to the 2023 general election, and we saw that most of the people who are being convinced or forced to vote leaders who have over the years. I know some senators who have been in the Senate for over 12 years. And if you ask them to identify any one single project that they have carried over
No.
at their own constitution level, they cannot identify any. But the following day, they come up with sweet tongue, trying to convince people to vote for them. And most people voting for them, if you discover, are people who are not educated. This is one of the effects that we're talking about. They vote for this leader because they have not been trained, they have not been educated, they don't know how to handle leaders accountable. So it's easier for leaders to come back and convince them that vote for me, I will do you this, even though the leaders do not carry out any kind of project.
Recently, I saw voters card of children on social media. Children are not even up to 10 years. They were registered to vote. So had they been these kids are in school now, all this wouldn't have happened. They would have understood that they are not yet at the right age to vote. But they went to villages to look for children that don't even know anything and registered them.
I think I come across that same
Yes.
video, and this is the same point I'm even trying to explain here, because so many of these children are underage. They don't even know the implication of what they are doing.
Yes.
And because they don't have a future, it's easier to convince them. Some of them to an extent that if you give them 1,000 and ask them to do anything, they can do anything.
Because
To
to
an
them,
extent
that
of even
1,000
killing
is a
somebody
big
is a
money.
very big money to them, because they are just looking for their own daily meal. So these are the implications of having a large number of auto school children when we are discussing the democratic process.
Meanwhile, if you check the north, this thing is a very common thing in the north. You see some parents will give birth to 10 children, 12 children without having means to take care of them. Then they will send them out to go and be begging for food and other things. What do you think federal government should do to tackle this situation whereby parents who are not responsible enough to take care of their children will just give birth, abandon their children? Some children, you see them, they will travel from, let me use Kano for example, they'll travel from Kano to Anambra State to go and beg. When you see one of them and you ask the person, where are you from? He will tell you he doesn't know. What is your name? What is your parents' name? He doesn't know. How old are you? They don't even know their age. Most of these children don't know their age. So what do you think federal government are supposed to do to tackle this situation?
Well, before I comment on that, I have been in almost all the northern part of the state myself, and I have seen and I experienced a lot of things that are happening there. And what we need to do now, apart from government, we also, at individual levels, and I know some NGOs that have dedicated their services to ensuring that at least they try to help eradicate this trend. I know some NGOs that even at individual levels, someone can decide to sponsor at maybe 10 or 20. I know some NGOs that are doing a lot, sponsoring up to 20 or even 100 out of school children. But the issue now is trying to convince some of these children, because some of them have been brainwashed into believing that anything education is bad. And
Especially the girls.
especially the girls, and they remain in that darkness. But the truth of the matter is, our government need to do a lot. Our government has a lot to do. The Minister of Education, Madam, I could remember when he was speaking at the recent 66th session of the National
NEC.
Executive Council meeting,
Yes.
which he said a lot of things. He also admitted failure as a Minister of Education, because since Adamu took over as Minister of Education and 7 years ago, he has 1 year remaining on his tenure to expire. Adamu, the first priority he put on ground was to tackle the issue of out of school children and ASU, and all these issues have escalated. So he confessed himself that he has failed as a minister in tackling all the major issues that he tabled when he came as a minister. But one thing that he mentioned that a big interest was blaming the state governors for not complementing the effort of the federal government. And I agree with him on that perspective, because most of these issue of auto school children, I think it's not something that we have to left in the hand of or
Just
leave
the
in the hand of the
president.
federal government, but
Yes.
it has to start at the grassroots.
Yes.
Our governors need has a lot of roles to play when it comes to this perspective. But they are not helping
Governors and
matters.
local chairmen.
Governors and local government chairmen and so,
Yes.
but they are not helping matters. They are. I don't think there is any governor under this present administration that will pinpoint any single thing that he has done to ensure that he has been able to contribute in tackling the out of school children. So what I would want the federal government to do is trying to implement some of the laws that it has enacted or mentioned. Last year, or can I say 2 years back, Adamu mentioned that when he was speaking at an occasion, I can't recall now, say that the federal government is making plans to prosecute parents who have failed to put their children in
Children in
school.
school.
I think it should go beyond just making mere statement. It should make this statement and enact them. The federal government said that it's going to enact the law, but up to now, over 2 years, we have not know where that law is setting. If you make a law, if it becomes a compulsory law that parents who fail to send their children to school should be prosecuted, then
Yes.
everybody will know that
Everybody will want
we
to
have
put
a
their
serious
child in
government in
school.
place who seriously want to tackle this
Yes.
issue. But just making mere statement and not taking any action, I don't think we have.
Okay. So now that elections are drawing closer, like very, very close, we have less than 3 months to election also. How can the government be held accountable to ensure that these children are taken care of?
I think this is the best time to carry this campaign to a higher level. All of us here have a lot to play, especially the media and at individual or family levels. All of us have a lot to play. We should hold these leaders accountable. We should let them know what is on. I don't think among the major presidential aspirants, any one of them is talking about even the issue of auto school children.
Not
It's
had
one of the
anybody
most
that spoke
biting issues
about
that we
it,
have
yes.
at the moment. So I think this is the right time that Nigerians should hold these leaders accountable. Nigerians should let them know the problem that we have on ground so that when they come to power, they will be able to tackle this issue. At the moment they're afraid to tackle this issue, we should not be afraid to hold them accountable.
And this is the time that all these children are used as, is it political talks also, to give them money, do this, do that. That's very bad. Federal government should try and do something about it. It's a very serious matter. What is your message to Nigerians and even the parents who abandoned their children?
My message to Nigerians, just like I have said earlier before, is to ensure that all of us join hands together to ensure that at our own level, we should play our own part and leave the rest to God. Nigerian parents, most parents are irresponsible because I know parents who have 4, 5 kids and they don't even care about their
Exactly
own
what I
education.
said earlier.
Yes,
You give birth to up to
yeah,
10 children
they-
and just
They
abandon
do not even
them.
care about their
Not
education.
feeding. Education is even, let's leave education
Sure.
aside first. Feeding, you have to eat first before you can even learn.
So it is the responsibility of government now to take up such kind of cases. Parents who are responsible, let the federal government take up the case by just like saying we are going to prosecute everybody who have children and fail to send them to school. Then they can go ahead and enact the law
Yes.
so that anyone doing such kind of behavior will know that there is a consequence at the end.
Exactly. Thank you, viewers. Thank you for listening and thank you for staying tuned. That is all on today's edition of Education Telescope on Leadership TV. And as usual, I am your host, Mariam Rabiu, and our in house analyst.
Henry Jehovah.
Thank you and see you next week, same time.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.